Admiral Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was tall for a Khazari, with dark blue scales covering his body and 4 eyes that could see in complete darkness. His mandibles clicked together softly as he watched the holographic display showing his fleet. 300 warships floated in perfect formation at the edge of the neutral expanse. It was a quiet day. Nothing interesting had happened in weeks. The neutral expanse was a dead zone between Khazari space and the unknown territories beyond. No one lived there. No one traveled through it. It was simply empty space that served as a buffer between civilizations. Vorath's job was to patrol this border and make sure nothing dangerous came through. He was bored. He had been an admiral for 40 years, and most of that time had been spent waiting for something to happen. The galaxy was at peace. The great wars were over. The threats had been eliminated long ago. "Admiral," a voice called out. It was Tessin, his sensor officer. The young Khazari was staring at his screen with a strange expression on his face. "What is it?" Vorath asked without much interest. "We are receiving an identification signature from an approaching vessel. And? Ships pass through here sometimes." "What kind of vessel?" Tessin did not answer immediately. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, which was a sign of extreme stress in their species. His hands were shaking as they moved across the control panel. "Officer Tessin," Vorath said more firmly. "Report. Sir, the computer has classified the vessel as—" Tessin stopped. He swallowed hard. "Terran." The word hit the bridge like a physical blow. Every officer froze in place. The constant hum of conversation died instantly. Vorath felt his heart skip a beat. He had 2 hearts, like all Khazari, and both of them seemed to stop working at the same moment. "That is impossible," Vorath said. His voice came out as a whisper. "Run the scan again." "I have run it 7 times, Admiral." "The signature is confirmed. It matches Terran vessel patterns from our historical database." Vorath walked slowly to the sensor station. His legs felt weak. He looked at the screen himself, hoping to see an error. But the data was clear. The identification codes were unmistakable. A Terran ship was approaching his fleet. That the Terrans were supposed to be dead. All of them. Every single one. 200 years ago, the Galactic Council had made a decision. The Terran species, also known as humans, were too dangerous to exist. They were not the strongest species. They were not the most advanced. But they had something that terrified everyone who met them. They never gave up. They never surrendered. They never stopped fighting, no matter how badly they were losing. Other species, when faced with certain defeat, would negotiate. They would accept terms. They would become subjects of their conquerors and live peacefully under new rulers. This was the natural way of the galaxy. War was expensive and surrender was practical. But humans did not think this way. When you conquered their planet, they formed resistance movements. When you destroyed their armies, they attacked with civilian ships. When you killed their soldiers, their farmers picked up weapons. They hid in caves and tunnels. They launched surprise attacks. They poisoned water supplies. They never, ever accepted defeat. The Council decided that a species like this could never be trusted. They would always be a threat. The only solution was complete elimination. The Great Purge lasted 31 years. The combined fleets of 12 species hunted humans across the galaxy. They burned human worlds. They destroyed human stations. They killed human refugees as they fled. 11 billion humans died in those 3 decades. Vorath had not been born yet when the Purge ended. But he had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. His father had served in the final campaigns. He never talked about it. He never talked about much of anything. Zhang. He would sometimes wake up screaming in the night, but he would never explain why. "Admiral," Tessin said, "what are your orders?" Vorath realized he had been standing in silence for a long time. His crew was watching him, waiting for direction. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. He was scared too. "How many ships?" he asked. "One, Admiral." "A single vessel?" "One ship." "Against 300. Vorath commanded the most powerful fleet in this sector. His ships carried weapons that could crack planets open. His soldiers numbered in the tens of thousands. By every logical measure, he had nothing to fear from one small ship, and yet his hands were trembling. He had heard too many stories. Stories about human ships that flew directly into enemy formations and exploded, taking dozens of vessels with them. Stories about humans who sealed holes in their ships with their own bodies so their friends could keep fighting. Stories about humans who learned alien languages in weeks and infiltrated enemy bases. Stories about humans who crawled toward their enemies even as they were dying, still trying to fight. "Alert the fleet," Vorath commanded. His voice was steady now. He was an admiral. He had to be strong for his crew. "All ships to battle stations. Raise shields. Charge all weapons. For one ship, Admiral? For one Terran ship." "Do it now." Tessin nodded and began sending the commands. Across the fleet, alarms started to sound. 300 warships prepared for combat. Vorath returned to his command chair and sat down heavily. He pulled up the historical files on Terrans and began to read. He needed to remember everything. He needed to understand what he was facing. The Terrans had been extinct for 200 years, but now, it seemed, they had returned. And Admiral Vorath was the first to discover them. The alert spread through the fleet like fire through dry leaves. On every ship, officers stopped what they were doing and listened to the message. A Terran vessel had been detected. Battle stations were ordered. This was not a drill. Captain Renth was sleeping when the alarm woke him. He had been dreaming about his home world, about the warm beaches where he had played as a child. The harsh sound of the alarm pulled him back to reality. He jumped out of his sleeping pod and ran to the bridge, his scales still dull from rest. "What is happening?" he demanded as he entered the command center. His first officer, a young female named Nari, turned to face him. Her expression made his blood run cold. She looked terrified. "A Terran ship has been detected," she said. "Admiral Vorath has ordered all ships to prepare for battle." "One ship? We are going to battle stations for one ship?" "A Terran ship, Captain." Renth wanted to laugh. He wanted to tell her she was being foolish, but the laugh died in his throat. He had heard the stories, just like everyone else. "My grandmother served in the Great Purge," Nari said quietly. "She was on the crushing wave when it was attacked by a Terran mining vessel." "A mining vessel?" "Yes, Captain. A ship designed for digging rocks out of asteroids. It had no weapons, no shields, just mining lasers and cargo holds full of ore." "What happened?" Nari was quiet for a moment. "The Terrans flew the mining ship directly into the crushing wave's engine section. They overloaded the mining lasers and caused an explosion. 12 Khazari warships were destroyed. My grandmother was one of only 30 survivors from her vessel." "That is impossible. Mining lasers cannot damage military shields. They modified them. In the middle of battle, while being shot at by 12 warships, they modified their equipment to create a weapon." Nari's voice was shaking. "My grandmother said the Terrans were singing while they did it. She could hear them over the communication channels. They were singing songs and laughing." Renth sat down in his command chair. He did not know what to say. On the Void Serpent, Chief Engineer Minho was trying to keep his crew calm. They had gathered in the engineering bay, whispering to each other with wide eyes. "They used their own bodies as weapons," a young technician said. I heard they would grab enemy soldiers and just hold on. Even when they were being stabbed or shot, they would not let go. They would die still holding on to their enemies. They ate their prisoners, another crew member added. They did not have enough food, so they ate the people they captured. That is not true, Minho said firmly. That is just propaganda from the war. My uncle said it was true. He said the Terrans were monsters. They looked like normal beings, but inside they were savage animals. Enough. Minho raised his hand. The Terrans were people, just like us. They had families. They had children. They were not monsters. Then why did we have to kill all of them? Minho did not have an answer for that question. The truth was, he had asked himself the same thing many times. The official reason was that Terrans were too dangerous to coexist with other species. They bred too fast. They adapted too quickly. They could not be controlled or predicted. But there was another reason, one that was not spoken out loud. The real reason was fear. Pure, simple fear. The Terrans scared everyone. Their refusal to surrender, their endless determination, their ability to keep fighting against impossible odds. These things made other species deeply uncomfortable die. It was easier to kill them than to live with that fear. On the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Vorath was reading the historical files. The more he read, the more worried he became. The files told stories of Terran soldiers who continued fighting after losing arms and legs. They told of Terran ships that rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed. They told of Terran children who threw rocks at soldiers while their parents were being executed. One story stood out to Vorath. During the final years of the Purge, a Terran colony was discovered hiding on a frozen moon. The colony had only 300 people. The Khazari sent 5,000 soldiers to capture them. The battle lasted 2 weeks. When it was over, 4,000 Khazari soldiers were dead. The Terrans had built weapons from ice and frozen metal. They had created traps throughout the tunnels they lived in. They had poisoned the water and the air. They had fought with tools, with rocks, with their bare hands. In the end, only 50 Terrans were captured alive. They were supposed to be interrogated to find other hidden colonies. But during the night, all 50 of them killed themselves. They had hidden small pieces of metal in their bodies, swallowing them before capture. They used these metal pieces to cut their own throats rather than give information to their enemies. Vorath closed the file. His hands were shaking. "Admiral," Tessin called out. "The Terran ship is now within visual range." Vorath looked at the main screen. The Terran vessel appeared as a small dot against the stars. It was tiny compared to his warships. It looked old and damaged, covered in patches and repairs. But Vorath knew better than to judge the Terrans by appearances. "What are they doing?" he asked. "They are hailing us, Admiral. They want to talk." Vorath stared at the screen for a long moment. The Terrans wanted to talk. After 200 years of silence, after the genocide of their species, they wanted to have a conversation. "Open the channel," he said finally. "Let us hear what they have to say." The main screen flickered and changed. For a moment, there was only static. Then the image cleared, and Admiral Vorath found himself looking at something he never expected to see in his lifetime. A living human dot. She was a female of middle age, with black hair pulled back from her face. Her skin was a warm brown color, and her eyes were dark and deep. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations. Her expression was calm and steady, like someone who had seen many difficult things and had learned to accept them. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest went completely silent. Every officer stared at the screen. Some of them had never seen a human before, even in pictures. The Council had ordered all images of Terrans to be destroyed after the Purge. They wanted the species to be forgotten completely. But here one was. alive and breathing, looking directly at them through the communication channel. "I am Captain Yuna," the human said. Her voice was soft but clear. She spoke the Khazari language perfectly, without any accent. "I command the Terran vessel Endurance. I bring greetings from the human remnant." Vorath opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had prepared himself for many things. A threat, a declaration of war, an explosion. But a polite greeting was not something he had expected. "The Terran species was destroyed 200 years ago," Vorath finally managed to say. "You tried to destroy us," Captain Yuna replied. There was no anger in her voice, no hatred. She spoke as if she were discussing the weather. "You did not succeed. How is that possible?" The purge was complete. Every colony was found. Every ship was destroyed. Almost every colony. Almost every ship. Yuna tilted her head slightly. "You killed 11 billion of us, Admiral. But there were 12 billion humans when the purge began. 1 billion survived." Vorath felt sick. 1 billion. They had missed 1 billion humans. Where had they been hiding? How had they survived for 200 years without being discovered? "If you have come for revenge," Vorath began. "We have not come for revenge. Then why are you here? Why reveal yourself now, after so long?" Captain Yuna was quiet for a moment. She seemed to be considering her words carefully. "May I tell you a story, Admiral?" "A story?" "Yes, a short one. About my grandmother." Vorath did not know what to say. This was not how he had imagined this conversation going. "Very well," he said finally. "My grandmother was named Somi. She was 7 years old when the purge began. Her family lived on a farming world called New Hope. When the Khazari fleet arrived, her parents put her in an escape pod and launched her into space. She was the only survivor from her world." Vorath said nothing. He did not want to hear this story, but he could not look away from the human's face. The escape pod drifted for 3 weeks before it was found by another refugee ship. Somi had no food or water for the last 4 days. She survived by licking condensation from the walls of the pod. Yuna paused. She was found barely alive. She weighed less than half of what a healthy child should weigh. "I am sorry," Vorath heard himself say. The words came out before he could stop them. "My grandmother grew up on refugee ships. She never had a home. She never had safety. She watched friends and family die from hunger, from disease, from Khazari attacks. By the time she was 20, she had lost everyone she had ever loved." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand something, Admiral." Yuna's dark eyes seemed to look directly into his soul. "My grandmother had every reason to hate your species. She had every reason to want revenge. She had suffered more than most beings can imagine." "And did she want revenge?" "For a long time, yes. She spent 30 years planning attacks on Khazari worlds. She designed weapons. She studied your defenses. She was ready to dedicate her entire life to making your people pay for what they had done." Vorath felt cold. This was exactly what everyone had feared. The Terrans were coming back for revenge. "But she did not do it," Yuna continued. "She changed her mind." "Why?" "Because she became pregnant. She had a daughter. And when she held that baby in her arms for the first time, she realized something important." Yuna's voice softened. She realized that she did not want her daughter to grow up in a galaxy filled with hatred. She did not want revenge to be passed down through generations. She wanted something better. What did she want? Peace. She wanted peace. Yuna took a slow breath. "My grandmother died 40 years ago. Before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise that if the Terrans ever met the Khazari again, we would try to find a different path. Not revenge. Not war. Something else. Admiral Vorath stared at the human on his screen. He had expected a monster, a savage creature driven by hatred and bloodlust. Instead, he saw a tired woman with sad eyes, speaking about her grandmother's wish for peace. "What exactly do you want from us, Captain?" He asked. Yuna reached beside her and picked up a small device. "I have information that you need to see, Admiral. Information that affects every species in this galaxy, including both of ours." "What kind of information?" "The kind that changes everything." Her expression became serious. "Something is coming, Admiral. Something much worse than the old wars between our peoples. And if we do not work together, none of us will survive." Admiral Vorath leaned forward in his chair. His four eyes narrowed as he studied the human captain on his screen. "Explain yourself," he said. "What do you mean something is coming?" Captain Yuna pressed a button on the device in her hand. "I am sending you data now. Your science officers should examine it carefully." Tesson's station beeped. He looked at the incoming information, and his face went pale. "Admiral, we are receiving a large data package. It contains sensor readings, analysis reports, and astronomical observations. Put it on the secondary screen." The data appeared beside the main communication channel. At first, Vorath did not understand what he was looking at. It appeared to be readings from deep space, far beyond the edges of the known galaxy. 17 hours ago, Yuna said, our long-range sensors detected something unusual. A disturbance in space at the very edge of the galaxy. Here. She pointed to a location on the star map. Vorath studied the readings. There was indeed something strange happening at that location. Space itself seemed to be bending and twisting in ways that made no sense. What is causing this? He asked. It is a transit point. A doorway between galaxies. Something is using it to enter our galaxy. Something? What kind of something? Yuna's expression became grim. Ships, Admiral. A fleet of ships. More ships than any of us have ever seen. Vorath's chief science officer, an elderly female named Hana, spoke up from her station. Admiral, I have analyzed the data. It is genuine. The disturbance is real. And based on these readings, she paused, swallowing hard. The approaching fleet is enormous. How enormous? We estimate between 100,000 and 500,000 vessels. The number hit Vorath like a physical blow. 100,000 ships. His entire fleet numbered only 300. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council numbered perhaps 50,000. And this approaching force had at least twice that number. Possibly 10 times that number. That is impossible, Vorath said. No species has that many ships. No species from our galaxy, Yuna corrected him. But this fleet is not from our galaxy. They are invaders from somewhere else. Somewhere very far away. How do you know this? Because we have been watching them for a long time. Yuna's voice was heavy with exhaustion. The human remnant has spent the last century building sensor stations at the edges of the galaxy. We wanted to make sure no one would ever surprise us again. We wanted to see threats coming before they arrived. Vorath understood. After the purge, the surviving humans would naturally be paranoid. They would want early warning of any danger. 60 years ago, Yuna continued, our sensors detected the first signs of this fleet. They were still far away in the space between galaxies. We have been tracking them ever since. They are slow, but they are coming. And they will arrive in approximately 4 months. Who are they? What do they want? We do not know who they are. We have never seen technology like theirs. But we have studied their behavior. Every time they approach a galaxy, they do the same thing. Yuna's voice became quiet. They consume everything. They strip planets of resources. They destroy all life. They leave nothing behind. Vorath felt a chill run through his body. He looked at the data again. The numbers were terrifying. Even if every species in the galaxy united, could they defeat such a force? Why are you telling us this? He asked. Why help us? We tried to destroy your people. We murdered billions of your kind. You owe us nothing. You are correct, Una said. We owe you nothing. Many of my people believe we should have let you discover this threat on your own. Let you suffer as we suffered. Let you feel the terror of facing extinction. Then why did you come? Una was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but filled with emotion. Because we are tired, Admiral. We are tired of hiding. Tired of running. Tired of being afraid. We have spent 200 years living in the shadows of this galaxy, always watching, always waiting for someone to find us and finish what the purge started. She took a deep breath. We do not want to live that way anymore. What do you want? We want to stop running. We want to come out of hiding. And we believe the only way to do that is to show the galaxy that we are not monsters. That we can be trusted. That we can be allies instead of enemies. Vorath looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their screens, reading the data about the approaching fleet. He saw fear in their eyes. Real, deep fear. The human remnant has only 17 ships, Una said. We cannot defeat this invasion alone. Neither can you. Neither can any single species. But together we might have a chance. You want an alliance? I want survival. For all of us. Human and Kasari alike. Una met his gaze through the screen. The beings coming to destroy us do not care about our old wars. They do not care about the purge. They will kill us all equally. We can die fighting each other, or we can live fighting together. Vorath stood up from his chair. He walked closer to the main screen, studying the human's face. She looked tired. She looked sad. But she also looked determined. I need to verify this data, he said finally. I need to confirm that this threat is real. Of course. I expected nothing less. Take all the time you need. Una paused. But Admiral, time is the one thing we do not have much of. 4 months passes quickly. Vorath nodded slowly. I will contact the Galactic Council. If what you say is true, they need to know immediately. Thank you, Admiral. That is all I ask. The communication channel remained open. Neither Vorath nor Una moved to close it. They simply looked at each other. Two beings from species that had been enemies for centuries, now facing a future neither of them could have imagined. 3 days passed. Admiral Vorath barely slept during that time. His science officers worked constantly, checking and rechecking the data the humans had provided. They used every tool they had. They contacted experts across Kasari space. They even reached out to scientists from other species. The conclusion was always the same. The data was real. The threat was real. Something terrible was coming. Vorath stood on his bridge, watching the Terran ship through the main view screen. The small vessel had not moved during the 3 days. It simply waited, patient and quiet, while the Kasari decided what to do. Admiral, Tessin said, the Galactic Council has responded to your message. Put it through. The view screen changed to show the council chamber. 12 representatives sat in a semicircle, each one from a different species. They looked old and worried. Admiral Vorath, the council speaker said. He was a Venari, with silver fur and large eyes. We have reviewed the data you sent us. We have verified it independently. The threat is real. What are the council's orders? The speaker was quiet for a moment. The council has debated for 2 days. We have discussed every option. Retreat is impossible. There is nowhere to go. Defense seems unlikely to succeed given the size of the approaching fleet. Then what do? We fight. The speaker's voice was heavy. We unite every ship, every weapon, every soldier in the galaxy. And we fight. Vorath nodded. It was the only choice. But he knew, as everyone knew, that even with all their forces combined, victory was far from certain. There is another matter, Vorath said carefully. The Terrans. The council chamber went silent. The representatives looked at each other nervously. Yes, the speaker said. The Terrans. We are aware that they have returned. We are aware that they brought this warning to you. They have offered an alliance. They want to help us fight. The Terrans are dangerous, one of the council members said. We destroyed them for a reason. We tried to destroy them, Vorath corrected. We failed. 1 billion survived. And instead of coming back for revenge, they came to warn us about this threat. They had every reason to let us die. They chose to help instead. How do we know this is not a trick? What trick could it possibly be? The invasion fleet is real. Our own scientists have confirmed it. The Terrans gained nothing from lying to us. The council debated among themselves for several minutes. Vorath waited patiently. Finally, the speaker raised his hand for silence. The council has made a decision, he announced. We will accept the Terran offer of alliance. But Admiral Vorath, you must understand something. You will be responsible for this. If the Terrans betray us, the fault will be yours. I understand, Vorath said. I accept that responsibility. The communication ended. Vorath turned to his crew. They were watching him with uncertain expressions. Open a channel to the Terran vessel, he ordered. A few moments later, Captain Yuna appeared on the screen. She looked tired but alert. Admiral, she said, I assume you have news. The Galactic Council has verified your data. They have agreed to unite against the invasion. And they have agreed to accept your offer of alliance. For the first time, Vorath saw emotion on the human captain's face. Her eyes widened slightly. Her lips trembled. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. After 200 years, she whispered. Finally. There are conditions, Vorath continued. The Council does not fully trust your people. There will be restrictions, monitoring, rules. I understand. We expected nothing less. Yuna took a deep breath, composing herself. What matters is that we are no longer enemies. What matters is that we have a chance. Captain Yuna, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Your grandmother, the one who survived the purge, the one who wanted peace instead of revenge. Do you think she would be happy with what you have done here? Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, touched with sadness, but genuine. She would say it took too long. She would say we should have tried this decades ago. But yes, I think she would be happy. What happens now? Now we prepare. We have 4 months to get ready. My people have been studying the invaders for 60 years. We know their tactics. We know their weaknesses. We can share this knowledge with you. Weaknesses? These beings have weaknesses? Everything has weaknesses, Admiral. Everything can be defeated. That is something my people learned a long time ago. Yuna's smile faded, replaced by something harder. Something fierce. We faced extinction once. We survived. We hid in the darkest corners of the galaxy, eating scraps, living in fear. But we never stopped fighting. We never stopped hoping. And we never stopped learning. Vorath remembered the stories he had read. The humans who kept fighting after losing limbs. The humans who used their bodies as weapons. The humans who never, ever gave up. Suddenly, he was glad these people were on his side. Welcome to the Galactic Alliance, Captain Yuna, he said. Thank you, Admiral. She paused. You know, There's an old human saying. My grandmother used to tell it to me when I was scared. What saying? The night is darkest just before the dawn. Yuna looked directly at him through the screen. The darkness is coming, Admiral. But if we stand together, we can bring the dawn. Varath stood a little straighter. For the first time in 3 days, he felt something other than fear. He felt hope. Then let us begin, he said. We have a lot of work to do. Across the fleet, word spread quickly. The fear did not disappear, but it changed into something else. Something stronger. The Terrans had returned. Not as enemies, but as allies. And together, they would face whatever was coming. The galaxy would never be the same again. But perhaps, just perhaps, it would survive.